Yeah, you
Rainer,
should. Hello.
welcome. How are you
Thank
doing?
you. Good.
We're here today
How are you?
looking at Traintopia, which has just hit the market. So,
So
Rainer,
yes.
maybe give an overview here. This does not fit what I'm picturing from Board and Dice. There's lots of Central American games that are coming out right now. Very
Yeah.
complex. This is sort of a
Yeah.
different
This.
world that you're going into.
Yeah, and we've always had a line of slightly lighter Euro games as well. So this one fits in that category. That we typically have a lighter game in the first half of the year, and then we have the more traditional, heavier Euro games the second half of the year.
Okay.
So,
So,
but
what was the initial appeal of Traintopia? So, what is the world that was presented to you, and then what did you actually bring to market?
Right. So one thing that we really like about this game is that this is a game that especially for casual gamers or for people who are or maybe even as a family game, this is a game that is very approachable. The rules are very simple and straightforward, but at the same time, it gives you meaningful decisions and choices to make throughout the game. As you can see here in the setup, this represents basically a two-player setup, and you have a number of pieces on the table. You have at the very top, you have 10 tiles, which are bonus tiles that can be gained by basically buying them through money tokens that you get during the game. In the middle, you have a draft where there's every round there will be a card that is turned over that tells you, okay, which types of wooden elements are available. In this case, there's one white meeple, one gray meeple. There's a black train and a blue mailbag that is available, as well as a number of tiles that are laid out based on the number of players. Every round, the players will draft the different game elements from this central offer until there's just one remaining. Map tiles that you draft will help you grow your network, either by expanding your tracks, by adding stations to the ends of the lines, by adding different districts and landmarks for your passengers to visit. The tourists, which are the white meeples, they score points when placed on a track based on the number of landmarks that are available. So, for example, on the right players area, there are 3 different landmarks that are available there. So there are 2 of them that are worth 2 victory points and 1 that is worth 3 victory points. So placing a tourist onto the track will score 7 victory points based on the landmarks that are visible along that route. The commuters, which come in 3 different colors, there are gray, yellow, and green, and they're drawn randomly from the bag and placed out on the card. So when you draft one of those and place it on a track, if we look at the player area on the left, for example, there are 3 different types of districts that are available there. There are those that have a green background, and there are 3 of those on that track. There are those with a gray background, and that track only has 1 of those. And then there are also districts with a yellow background. And based on the meeple that you are drafting and adding to that network, you will score victory points based on the same color network. So adding a green commuter to this particular track would score you 3 victory points, whereas a gray one would only score you a single victory point. The other wooden elements, so the trains and the mailbags, they don't score anything immediately, but they give you victory points at the end of the game instead. Now, one thing that is important to keep in mind as you're drafting these pieces is that you want to obviously maximize your scoring potential. You want to be able to add new tiles, expand your network. You want to increase the length of your routes. You have a lot of freedom in how you're placing the tracks. So basically, as you can see already in the example, they don't have to line up perfectly, but they can be basically offset as long as you don't create something where the track would run into just the grass, right? That would not be allowed. But otherwise, placing it so that it's offset as long as you create a valid track, or even placing it on the side. So you could place a tile so that it just goes along the grass side. So you put grass to grass, for example. That would also be a legal placement. But otherwise, you want to maximize the length of your tracks. You want to maximize when should you take the different elements. When should you take a tourist? Because once you've taken a particular wooden element and added it to your track, you can never place that same wooden element on that track again. So that means
So
if
you
you
can have a
early on
white
say,
and a
okay,
gray and yellow. You can do all
correct,
those.
yep. Yeah, so you can have all of the different ones, but if you're building up a route and you're saying, okay, well, I have now 6 green districts, for example, and you take a green commuter and place it on that track, that gave you 6 victory points. But now any green districts that you add for the rest of the game to that same track will not score you victory points because you've already scored for that particular element. So there's a lot of those timing issues of which, especially for gamers, will provide meaningful decisions of deciding, okay, when should I add these different types of tiles to my network? When should I take the pieces that score me victory points? How long should I build my tracks? Because the longer I build it without placing a certain color commuter on that track, well, my opponents are going to know that. So they're going to say, well, I might only score 5 points by taking the yellow commuter, but if I leave it for you, you're going to score 11 points, right?
Right. Are you not allowed to take another one if you already have one, or do you just not score anything?
You cannot place another one on that same track of the same color.
Okay.
So if you're already
tracks.
yes, so you could do that on a different track. So that's why deciding how much are you investing into a single track versus are you building up multiple tracks to give you a bit more flexibility, maybe not scoring as much each time when you're placing a commuter, but instead giving you multiple opportunities. So in the example that is laid out here, for example, let's say that a yellow commuter had been placed on the track at the bottom. That track has 3 districts. Now there are 3 other tracks there because they haven't connected. But the one that starts with the red station, there are no yellow districts at all on that track. So even though you could place a yellow commuter on that track because it does not already have one, that would not score you any victory points. There's that little short S-shaped one in the middle. That one would allow you to place a yellow commuter, but just for 1 victory point, right? So there are those decisions that you have to keep in mind. You want to both expand your routes. You want to take different wooden pieces and elements and add them there for scoring and so forth.
Okay. But of course, in a 2-player game, if you're stealing 8 points from someone else, that's effectively 8 points for you. So you may want
Correct.
to take it in.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And
So
there are also
the
well, I was just going to say, so there are the money tokens that are on the tracks as well, which give you a little bit of a flexibility. Not every track is going to have one, but some of the tiles, when you're placing it into your network, if there's a money token depicted on the tile, you place a physical money token on that. And these money tokens, you can use them either to break one of the rules in the game. So, for example, by placing a yellow commuter on that track that would normally not score me anything, I can spend a money token and say, well, I'm allowed to place the commuter there legally because I don't already have a yellow commuter. But normally that would not score me any victory points because there are no yellow districts. But I can decide, okay, by spending a money token, I will now score for the green districts instead. So that's a way for you to make a little bit more use out of the components that you're drafting. You can also use the money tokens to purchase any of the 10 tiles that are at the top, which either you a large number of the same type of network. So maybe you want to expand your gray network, for example, or they have very specific shapes. Some of them also have networks that can count as any color and so forth.
Okay. So you have the basic draw or appeal, I guess, of either taking a tile to build something for the future or score something now. And that's
Correct.
the tension you have all the time as you're going across things. Okay. So was the game initially presented to you in this manner? With this setup or the look of it?
Yes, so it was. Yes, from the very beginning, it was a network building game, right? And it had already a train theme to it. Of course, it went through the development process of trying to balance the different options in there. Should we keep the train theme and so forth? And we felt that that theme itself is a very very universally liked theme. It's something that fits no matter the culture and age group as well, right? This is a game that needs to fit both seasoned gamers, but also for more casual gamers, something that could be appealing to look at both as far as the cover of the game and the name of the game, but also how it's laid out and how it's played.
Okay. Yes, it's very intuitive as well. When you give someone a train network, they understand immediately sort of the
Right.
overall goal: build up a network,
Yep.
get passengers, do things. Does
Yep.
the game include
Yeah,
rules for solo play as well?
it does not, unfortunately. So this is, of course, with all of the heavier games that we have, there's always a solo AI for those. This one does not have one currently. So
Okay. Maybe you can talk a little bit about speaking of solo play. I know you're doing an interesting promotion. This is separate from Traintopia, but you're doing an interesting promotion where people can get print and play versions of a half dozen of your different titles.
correct.
Sort of
So
not solo play for Traintopia, but if people are looking for things to do at home that are
right. Yeah, and
online.
we have several of the older titles that we've released in the past. Some of which are out of print currently. And several of those are ones that you can play solo. So we, for example, have the different games in the Mistfall series. There are adventure games, they're cooperative games, which means that they lend themselves well to any number of players, including solo play. So we've done that where we have made those available for people, where they can get basically a new print and play version of one of our previous games every month. But we've also created some new ones. So, for example, we have one that is called Shadow of the Obelisk, which is inspired by Tekkeno, which is coming out this summer. That is a tick and write game where basically you have tiles that you will be turning, and as they are rotated to the different steps, that will present you with the different options that you have. So that's also one that we've added to that, to the print and play. And of course, you can play that also with any number of players. That one also lends itself well to being played, for example, virtually over Skype or Zoom or any kind of other
What you looking for?
digital or video meeting.
Right. So you mentioned Tekkeno. You also you've been testing that, I believe, on the Tabletop Simulator. You also have Tawantin Suyu coming out later in 2020.
Yep.
How has your playtesting adjusted? I mean, clearly you're doing a lot more virtually. Has that changed the type of feedback you're getting, or what you're getting out of playtest?
I mean, it's a hard thing because normally when you're playtesting a game, being able to sit in person, even if I'm not directly playing, but being able to observe how the other players are playing the game, how they interact with the pieces, their reactions on their faces, being able to see, okay, are they thinking based on the expression on their face, or are they confused about something? And being able to be there in person and observe is hugely important, especially for games that are heavier, right? So when we do the playtesting with external playtesters in different groups, we usually use that as a way of being able to just observe the playtest, see, okay, do they seem to struggle with something? Are there certain aspects that they look up in the rules a lot, or that they would get confused over? And that part we're missing out on by doing digital playtesting. Now, of course, having access to digital platforms like Tabletopia, for example, we're able to put the games on there, and we can still do, especially internally, because we have people in different locations. We have two different offices in Poland, and then I'm based in the United States. That still allows us to play these games together. It also allows us to be able to show it off to media or to reviewers or others in the industry that would like to get a look at these games, which we would normally otherwise have been showing off at a convention or at some other meetup. So it has been really helpful for us to be able to use these digital platforms as something that was originally meant to be kind of a secondary thing that was there to assist us, but we've had to transition that into more of a primary tool to be able to get the most use out of being able to show that game to people, even though we can't meet in person.
Okay. We had a question from viewer Counting Gardens asking about Traintopia. Everyone has their own network that they're building. Is there any connection with other
That is
people, or you're
correct.
just on your own? Okay.
No, you have your
You're
own
just on your
network.
own.
So basically everything that you're building, no one else can mess that up by placing a tile or so in a way that directly affects your network. Of course, there is competition of the tiles that you're drafting because there are only so many of them, and in particular the stations. So whenever you're placing down and creating a track, you will only score for that track if it's been completed. So if you have a station to station endpoint. So
Okay.
there's competition for those. So trying to gauge so that you have different options, like in the same example that is set up here, there are now 4 different stations in there. That means that you have more options for how you can try to connect them. Maybe that red one in the upper area, you can build it around, connect to the blue one. Maybe this lower blue one can be built up and connected to the red one in the middle, and so forth. Because you only score points from those tracks if they are completed. And there's also on the back of the player aid. So the player aid shows, okay, on your turn, these are the things that you can do. You draft a tile and or another element, you add it to your network, and then it has a summary of what you can spend the money tokens for. But on the back of that, it also has a reminder of how you score the tracks at the end. So based on the length of the track, you also score more victory points if you have different colored stations. So if possible, you want to have a red and blue end station, because that will give you extra victory points. And then the mailbags, which are also hotly contested in the draft, they allow you to double the victory points of a track. Now, obviously, only as long as that track has been completed.
Okay. And if you score, so each figure can only go on the track once, but if I have a yellow figure on this track and a yellow figure on this track, can I then connect them, or they're forbidden from connecting?
So if they connect, basically then you just have to remove one of them. So that it's fine to build a track, but if they connect, because there are certain objectives that require you to have X number of certain wooden pieces on your tracks. So that way, if you're connecting those 2 tracks, which you might want to do to score victory points for the track being completed, but then you have to remove any duplicate components from those. So that's just it's definitely something that you can do, as long as you're aware of the fact that those would be, any excess would be removed.
Happy to have an early look, or a look now at Traintopia, which is on the market. If you are interested in the game, you like the sound of it from how Rainer described it and presented it. Thank you very much for your time, and perhaps we'll have you on future events as well, because we'll probably be doing more of these, since this is what we can do right now.